This is the first of many episodes where I go over the Cimaris lore entries and try to find some connections, as well as find interpretations as to what they mean for the world we currently know. For these, I purposely lean towards interpretations that are less obvious, as I find them more interesting, but I'll still include others as usual. I won't be reading the entry entirely, so I recommend reading it yourself and getting your own understanding before my theories bias yours. Right off the bat, we are introduced to a new station in the Orokin hierarchy, the Archimedean. Archimedeans are clearly scholars and scientists named after the Greek scholar, Archimedes, sworn to work towards a solution that will allow the dying empire to finally survive, with great cost should they fail. One such solution is the Crewman project, created by Archimedean Paratol. However, it violates the 7 strictures laid out by the Orokin Council of Executors, and is thus immediately punishable by death. Again, we are shown the Congress of Executors and the power they wield in the Orokin hierarchy, and here we can see that they embody both forms of the word, executor and executor, upholding and maintaining the wishes of the Empire as well as carrying out harsh and deadly punishments. Their dedication to the 7 principles is shown to be absolute, as they adhere to them even when ignoring them could mean salvation. These 7 principles are laws laid out by the Orokin before their death, and are laws that are crucial to maintaining the survival of the Empire. As an aside, we see that at this point in time the Void has been elevated to deific status, and is regarded as feminine. This would make sense, because in the current Corpus religion, the Void is referred to as an entity, and not simply a space. We are shown that in these trying times, harsh generational punishment exists, dooming your entire corpus should you fail to live according to the strictures. We are shown that corpus does mean family at this point in the Empire's life, long before the final inevitable collapse of the Empire that the anti-Moa lore takes place in. Corpus can also mean team or group, and is not necessarily defined by blood. The death of the Empire was not instant, as the Stalker said, but slow and gradual, with a constant waning of resources as hunger and famine spread with the lack of a solid leadership to guide them. Or, this is simply a time of trial in the Empire's life and not after the slaughter at the terminus that the Stalker describes. Paratol's Crewman project does not refer to the crewmen as we currently know them, but instead to the synthetic crewmen, for which the project is named. These synthetic crewmen are clearly sentients, as they are described as machines and become resilient to further attacks of a particular type after first being subjected to it. However, the 7 principles prevent the use of sentience, perhaps because they rely on sacred void energies which are not to be misused, or because they are clearly learning from their first grave mistake if this takes place after the Old War, and the sentient used in this judgment proceeding is either a sample kept for preservation, or a recreation by Paratol and the Archimedeans. The Archimedeans are attempting to exploit the sentients to fulfill the Great Plan, which is a final solution that will guarantee the survival of the Empire. Something to note is Ballas's distinction of Orokin. The Executors are described as perfect, with golden eyes, possibly indicating that the Orokin are a separate race from the regular humans. This alternate race idea is possibly supported by the dialogue in the corrupted ancient entry, where Lorist Ontella seems to describe the Orokin as their own class or race entirely. Alternatively, they could simply be speaking in the abstract, with Orokin being used much like Corpus, as a family or whole. The Sentients' involvement was to build a great interstellar rail as they went, since their machine nature required no food or water to sustain themselves. Upon arrival to the Tau system, they would terraform a planet for the remaining Orokin, and await their arrival at the other end of the rail. However, sentients are weak to void energies, and we are shown that rails function on a system of void energies, thus marooning the creatures until the arrival of the remaining Orokin on the rails, and ensuring they do not revolt and attempt to return to the origin system. The final rail at the outer terminus was likely shattered in a final attempt by the remaining Orokin to prevent the spread of the sentients, as they may have adapted to their void weaknesses in the years it took them to terraform the Tau system, which is why they were able to return now, or they have developed their own form of interstellar travel that does not require void. Alternatively, the Orokin elites may have shattered the rail in an attempt to create their own utopia, leaving the lesser Grineer or average commoner in the origin system to die of starvation and lack of resources, but upon arriving in the Tau system, found that the 7 strictures were correct and the sentients had turned, destroying the Empire forever. And of course, this could be before the adoption of the Tenno in the Old War, and the Congress of Executors could be more fitting towards the definition of executioner, and less about maintaining the Empire in the Orokin instead. The potential chronology would be supported by the Lancer lore entry, which seems to describe one of the first sentient attacks on the fringe of the origin system, indicating that the Sentients managed to return through some unknown means, first to the edges of the system. Though at this point in the crewman entry, void technologies seem to be relatively well established, and my own interpretation of the Tenno lore indicates it came at a time when void energies were still largely misunderstood, with fast travel technology still primitive in design, as hinted by the catastrophe with the Zariman. But as with many things in the Warframe universe, and especially the Samara's lore entries, these things are largely uncertain and should in no way be taken as the only interpretation. As I said, I tend to believe the more outlandish theories as I find them more interesting, but until the time comes when we have all the facts, this is what we know.